Hey guys, it's Colton and welcome back to another car vlog. This time not starting in the car, but today we are going to be talking about Gen 1 Coyotes and whether they're still worth buying in 2023. And in my opinion, yes. I think this is one of the best bang for your buck cars that is available right now. And part of that's because with the way that inflation is going on and stuff like that, and is really happening a lot, and for people my age and younger, it's becoming really noticeable for probably the first time in our lives. Bang for your buck cars, they're just not as cheap as they used to be, but there's still a lot of value here. So we're gonna go ahead and go take the Mustang for a spin, and we are also going to be going and bringing my wife some coffee at her job because we're gonna be a good husband, which seems like it could be maybe important, so there's that. So there's no time to waste, let's go ahead and jump in the car and get ready to go. So little thing, I just filmed that clip of me driving away, and immediately afterward, there was a car behind me on the road, and so I was like, okay, I'm not just gonna back up with this car behind me back to my house. So I turned and went down another road to then turn around and come back. That is the worst road ever, and I scraped the front lip on like, I don't know, 10 different bumps. If that ever happens in the future, I know not to go down that road again. Oh my goodness. We are at the good old Starbucks to grab some coffee for my wife and some cake pops for the children that she's babysitting, and a coffee for me too, just because we're here, you know, just because we're here. I have a mobile order for Colton.
Yeah, we have it ready for you. We'll see you at the window.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, you too. I was about to say, this is gonna take me forever to get out of here, and then someone let me out when they totally had the right of way, which is nice and everything. I still don't know if I recommend that, but I guess it benefited me this time, so whatever. So I got this, I have no idea how you pronounce this, Olato or Olelato or something like that, shaken espresso, that's supposed to, I don't know, I didn't know what it was, I had to look it up. And it has like a little bit of, I think, olive oil in it or something like that, and it's supposed to make it very like rich and creamy, which I'm a fan of rich and creamy. That sounded creepy. It's good. I mean, it's not like worlds different from any other coffee you would expect, but it's good. So I don't have a problem with it. All right, coffee and cake pops drop off has been a success. The Ole latte or lotto, whatever it was, I don't know, I've already forgotten, has very much separated. Is it worth it? Good question. It's good, I guess. It doesn't taste a lot different than another shaken espresso I would have expected, but I do think this one is intentionally designed to make you crap your pants, being that it has dairy and olive oil, but, you know, I guess maybe that's a feature, not a bug, I'm not sure. One thing I do know is that we are talking about bang for your buck, and that first gen Coyotes are great bang for your buck. So, to answer the obvious question of, is this truck burning loads of oil? Yes it is, because there's lots of white exhaust smoke just flowing out. It's like bluish tinted and just, oh, that truck is not healthy at all. Sorry, my ADHD is showing very heavily right now. But Coyotes, bang for your buck cars? I would say absolutely. First gen Coyotes, I mean, yes, there's definitely been improvements that have been made as we've gone on from Gen 1 through all the way up to the current Mustang GTs that are coming out here shortly are Gen 4 Coyotes. The bones of the engine are still pretty much the same. Getting a Gen 1 Coyote, you're not missing out on a lot of what you would get with a Gen 3 or Gen 4. Those do make more power. They're slightly stronger from the factory. Obviously, they have the things like direct injection and some differences in the heads and things like that. But for the most part, I don't think it's a huge loss getting a Gen 1 or Gen 2 Coyote in comparison to the newer engines, but it is a huge savings. Just like the LS motor, this is Ford's engine they found that just seems to work. It's just good. It doesn't really need updated. It's just like LS engines where, you know, it's the basic format of the LS engine has been in cars since 1997 or 8, I believe at this point. And the modern day LS engines under the LT naming, you know, for some reason, again, are still really similar engines. There's differences, of course, with things like direct injection, and there's various different changes, but again, the bones of the engine are really similar. And Coyotes are kind of the same way. They have not been around for nearly as long as the LS engine, but Ford's modular motor series, which the Coyote is a part of, has been around for just as long, and actually, I believe, a little bit longer than the LS series of engines. I'm sure any huge Ford guys are probably going to scream at me that there's been some format of Ford mod motors since like the 70s or something like that, but the modern day mod motors, I believe it was like the mid 90s or something like that where that kind of started with like the 5.4 Triton and like the single overhead cam 4.6s and stuff like that were found later on in the Mustangs and various different vehicles, Crown Vics. But ultimately, we're talking a lot about the engine because the engine is a huge selling point. The Coyote engine is a fantastic engine. If you want to make power easily, this is one of the best choices you can make. And it will be unerringly reliable the entire time that it does it. It's like the second slingshot I've seen today. What the heck is going on? But ultimately, the car that you get around the engine is also a pretty appealing package. I mean, S197 Mustangs get kind of a bad rep a lot of the time, and I really don't think that that's justified, and I'm saying that not just as an owner of a Mustang, but someone who, I've never considered myself like a huge Mustang fan. I like Mustangs. There's very few cars that I just openly very much dislike. But up until me owning this car, I mean, this has never really been my favorite muscle car that there is. But there is a lot of pros to this platform. If we're going to talk about cons first and foremost, like, yes, as most cars from this era, especially in the United States, the interior is not particularly impressive. I don't personally think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Are some of the materials cheap? Yeah, absolutely. Does things not hold up as well as they possibly could? Yes, that is absolutely also the case in a lot of cases. Is it ugly and is it uncomfortable? No, not really. I mean, yes, the materials, this is hard plastic. This, on the dashboard, is like a weird faux vinyl-y kind of stuff. This is hard plastic. Again, the materials, yes, I get that they're cheap, but Ford at the time managed to make this interior cheap, but cheerful, which I appreciate. Everything still aesthetically looks pretty good, even today. It is just modernized enough, but mostly incredibly retro, that it still looks good, and I think that it's going to continue looking good for a long time. It's a really good blend of classic and at the same time being modern enough that it's still comfortable and it has the functionality of a modern day car. Another major con, probably the major con that people point out about the S197 Mustang is the solid rear axle. And yeah, that is a con depending on what you're doing. If you're buying this car as a straight line car, you should not be concerned whatsoever about the solid rear axle. If you're going drag racing, there is no better choice for suspension than a solid rear axle. In the corners, is it ideal? No, it is absolutely not. However, there are countless examples of beloved performance cars from years past that are solid rear axles that people still view with a lot of nostalgia and still really like and enjoy and respect. And in the same sort of way, sorry it's dark, I'm pulling into my garage. And in the same sort of way, there's plenty of different examples of even race cars and stuff like that that still use a solid rear axle to this day. It's a technology that's incredibly ham-fistedly simple. There's nothing impressive about it, but it works. It does work. Is it going to be as ideal as independent suspension in the rear or in the front? I suppose if this was a 4x4, whatever, or a gasser. But is it going to be as ideal as independent rear suspension? Obviously, it's not going to be. Is it something that should be your make or break? I really don't think it should be.
Why, hello there. Let's close that.
If I didn't know any better, it literally looks like someone sabotaged my coffee.
Like, oh, cool, I'm definitely being poisoned. You know, normal sort of things that happen on a daily basis. Olé. Let's go ahead and close out this video here in the garage as we finish talking about the Mustang and why this is a great bang for your buck option. We talked about the solid rear axle and why that really probably should not be something that makes you not get this car. Trust me, would I have preferred a independent rear suspension? Yes, absolutely. I even looked into conversions for the independent rear suspension on this car and found that it's pretty much not really worth doing, which is basically what I expected. But that does not mean that this car cannot corner. It absolutely can. And not to mention, the front suspension of the car is actually very good and has a very nice tight feeling to it, more than you would expect from a muscle car with a heavy V8 at the front end. And there's been plenty of people that have had an amazing time on back roads or track days with minimal modifications to the suspension with these cars for years. And how can we forget, this is just a good looking car. Whether or not muscle cars specifically are your taste or whether retro design in general is your taste, may change that opinion, but it's fairly objective that this is just a nice looking car. It's a car that most people would see rolling down the road and think, hey, that's a cool car. And I absolutely love the way that this car looks. It makes me really happy when I walk out into the garage and I see this, or when I'm, I don't know, inside a store or something, or a restaurant, and I walk out and see my car. It makes me really happy. It's just a huge perk to owning this car. But you could say that about a lot of different cars. But ultimately, the engine and drivetrain of this car is fairly bulletproof. Yes, the MT82 is not the strongest transmission in the world, but in my opinion, it is far from the worst transmission in the world. If you're not a complete idiot with it and you're not planning on making 8 gazillion horsepower, you will probably be fine. And worst case scenario, there are plenty of different transmission swaps that are available that have all of the parts already laid out for you that people have done before, like T56 swaps, or I mean TR6060s. But even if you decide to stay with the MT82, it's not that bad of a transmission. I get that there are problems with it. I'm not naive to that, but there are far worse transmissions to be worried about more than the MT82, at least in my opinion. You can take that with a grain of salt. I am an owner, of course, so I'm not going to pretend like There's probably not some bias to what I'm saying that I might not even be aware of, but honestly, I don't think that is the thing to be overly concerned about with this car. But ultimately, I bought this car for $16,000. It had just over 100,000 miles on it. The long tube headers and full exhaust and intake and everything on it were already done. And I'm pretty happy, all things considered, with my purchase. But I bought it from a dealer. If you're willing to spend time on the private party side of things, I'm sure you could get this same car for even cheaper. And I know that I personally have seen examples with upwards of like 150 or 170,000 miles, if that's something that you're willing to go after, that have been down in like the $12,000 or $13,000 mark. Now that's not no money, but for the performance that you're getting, this is a car that with minor bolt-ons can make practically an additional 80 to 100 horsepower at the wheels over what it does factory. As much as I hate this, the era of the $5,000 400 horsepower car is just not here anymore, not in the same sort of way. Can you buy cars for cheap and strap on a turbo and make lots of power? Sure. But even the once known bang for your buck cars are getting more expensive. Look no further than like 240SXs for drifting. Obviously, it was a huge platform in the 90s and early 2000s up to 2010s. Well, I mean, people still use them today, obviously. But it was a cheap car that was great at what you bought it for, and in so many different ways, it was a great bang for your buck platform for drifting. Well, look at 240SXs now. First of all, try finding one in the first place. They're not that easy to find in general anymore, and when you do, they're either total rust buckets that they're still asking $5,000 or $6,000 for, oftentimes, or barely tolerable for $10K, or they're like $20,000. A lot of the cars that we grew up idolizing as amazing bang for your buck cars are not that great of bang for your buck anymore. The S197 Mustang, particularly the Gen 1 Coyote, I think is going to be the next major bang for your buck car that becomes available. In a few years, I wouldn't be surprised if we can find these for under $10,000. And that is going to be one heck of a deal. So yes, I am an owner of this car, but objectively, there are so few vehicles that will give you this level of performance reliably for the price that you can find these cars for. And the aftermarket support is there to do literally anything you would ever want to do. So hey, if you're looking for your next potential project or platform to just screw around with in general, maybe consider a Gen 1 Coyote. I think that it'll be a lot of fun and you'll really enjoy it. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name has been Colton and this has been Colton Does Cars. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more videos of this sort, as well as various different content involving my personal car, my 2011 Mustang GT, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000, I was about to say 100,000. That'd be amazing. I don't think that's possible. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So I really appreciate you guys stopping by and supporting the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.